report from the Department of Investigation sheds some light on why it costs so much to house asylum seekers and the homeless.
It found nepotism, a lack of competitive bidding, and some exorbitant executive salaries. Political reporter Marcia Kramer has been covering this issue for years, and she joins us now with this report. Marcia.
Christina Maurice, Mayor Adams makes $258,000 a year to run the largest city in the nation. But believe it or not, his salary is peanuts compared to what some operators of homeless shelters make, and that's just one of the reasons the city isn't getting the best bang for the buck at some of the shelters it operates.
Those are certainly eye-popping numbers. Tell
me the eye-popping numbers.
800,000, almost $1 million.
Yes, that's right. City investigators looking into the financial practices at 51 shelters found that at some of them, executives are raking in the dough for taking care of asylum seekers and the homeless. According to the report, the chief executive of a provider called CORE received more than $1 million in 1 year. The president and chief executive officer of Vacation Network Housing got over $916,000 in 2021, and the president and CEO of shelter provider Canva received over $700,000 during multiple years.
I think the problem here is that although the city requires that any executive compensation be reasonable, there's no other limitation or restriction, and reasonableness is a pretty expansive concept.
The report, part 2 of a probe that began in 2021 when Bill de Blasio was mayor, also found a number of other troubling practices that affected the bottom line, like nepotism, hiring relatives, immediate family members, and the children of shelter executives, conflicts of interest, like a shelter executive who also was employed by a security company hired by the shelter, and failure to follow competitive bidding practices. DOI found multiple examples where shelter operators awarded multi-million-dollar maintenance contracts to companies affiliated with the building's landlords. Since city budget officials expect to spend over $10 billion on sheltering the unhoused over the next 3 years, DOI officials say the reforms they recommend could add up to big cost savings.
That is certainly the hope, right? These are all reforms that are intended to significantly reduce the risk of corruption, fraud, and waste.
The salaries of the CEOs, I get it, all right? We need to be able to spend some money on our fearless leader who's, he's gonna really square away how billions and billions of dollars of taxpayers' money is being spent housing illegal aliens, because we're a sanctuary city. And even New York Mayor Eric Adams, and he's in trouble for this. He's in trouble for this. He's been indicted. And a lot of folks say the reason he's being indicted is because he went against Biden administration and said, hey, this whole, immigration thing and sanctuary city thing isn't working. We need to change things up. We need some federal dollars down here. And what'd they do? They indicted him. Yeah. Oh, hey, you're going against the current here. We're not doing that. You're a Democrat. Yeah, you got to take on lots of people because that's what we're doing. It's 2024. Come on, man. So I get it. If you want to, bring somebody in that is amazing at their job, sometimes you're going to have to pay top dollar. But to run these kind of outfits where you're basically just giving taxpayer money away, does that really require it's not like it's a for-profit operation, right? And that's what drives me crazy. These nonprofits, King County Regional Housing Authority here in Seattle, King County, right? They pay hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for just complete lack of results. Like to the point where they're all sitting around scratching their heads, our mayor included, going, I think we should just shut the whole you-know-what down. Shut the whole effort down. Just boop. Let's start over from scratch. We'll get more results. Because, man, we've had some knuckleheads running that deal. Just some people that are, you're what? What? Nepotism, lack of competitive building, and exorbitant salaries are inflating the cost to shelter asylum seekers and the homeless, according to city investigators. And you've got so many millions of folks that have come into the United States that this is exacerbated by all of these shelter asylum providers throughout the United States. And you, the taxpayer, are footing the bill, particularly you, the taxpayer, located in sanctuary cities and states. Yeah, it's special, right? It's a special participation award you get. I'm right in there with them. We're Seattle. We just don't get a ton. Nobody comes across the border and goes, yep, I want to head right to Seattle. They just don't. It's not a thing. There's not enough community here. And we're so far away from the southern border. It's like, how do we get there? And west, right? Department of Investigation looked into the financial practices of 51 shelters and found some executives were really raking in the dough. They were. $1 million. Core, a provider called Core, got $1 million in a year. That is big, big bucks. And what are you actually doing there, Sparky? I mean, what do you do? I mean, is that worth $1 million? When at the end of the day, you are literally giving away taxpayers' money. I understand there's some coordination and there's some effort and, you got tons of positions and whatnot, but doesn't it seem like this is a little bit backwards where we're dealing with absolutely no money and you at the very top are charging $1 million to get your job done? Seems exorbitant to me. Seems crazy. But this is what we talk about with the homeless industrial complex, right? I mean, the folks with their hand out taking a paycheck, they're not going to back down from any of these salaries. Hell no. No, this is what they're in it for. Oh, yeah. We just need some more housing. If we could only get some more housing. How many times have you heard that? And you're like, no, you know what? Here's how you end the homeless thing. You cut off everything. Yeah. If you had a city like Seattle that cut off all homeless subsidies, you name it, just gave them bare bones, nothing. Hey, you can have a room in a shelter, community shelter. We're going to give you absolute bare bones necessities. We're not handing out drugs anymore. We're not handing out, needles. We're not handing out tin foil. We're not handing out food, tents, blankets, clothing. We're not doing any of that. How many of the folks do you think would move to Portland? Yeah, in droves. Because all of a sudden, what's to keep them here in Seattle? Just a thought I had. President's chief executive officer of Acacia Network made over $916,000. Man, that is a paycheck. That's a paycheck. And you're dealing with, don't you feel bad if you're working with homeless people who've got zero to their name? Maybe they got physically assaulted on the way up from whatever, Southern American country or Central American country they're from. And they've just had this rough road and, you're helping them get into shelter, whatever. And you're making $916K. How's that work? Yeah. President and CEO of shelter provider Cambia received over $700,000 during multiple years. Those are certainly some eye-popping numbers, do you think? But we've known this all along. City requires that any salary, any executive compensation be reasonable. There's no other limitation. Is $916,000 reasonable for somebody who's literally giving away taxpayers' dollars? Trying to figure out the most optimal way to do that. Maybe their salaries should be a certain percentage based on efficiency on how they use their money. I don't know. I'm just, spitballing here. But when you're making $1 million at the top, I mean, literally, these folks are not looking to make a profit because that's the opposite of how this works. The goal is to get rid of all their money each year so that they keep, recycling that money through. Because if you don't spend it, you don't need that money. And you spend it on a bunch of garbage, right? All right. Let's get a bunch more cots in here, whatever it might be. Now, I know that it's necessary to have these entities, but at such a cost, I don't think so. But this is why so many people are just frustrated with the whole homeless industrial complex thing, because it's mandated by law that you have it in these cities, especially New York. And that's what we're talking about. But then the money they're spending is just, nuts. So then they also go into nepotism, hiring relatives. Man, we have seen that time and time and time again. Hey, what's your brother-in-law doing? Nothing. All right. He is vice president. Well, let's just, throw him in there. Conflicts of interest, like a shelter executive who was also employed by a security company hired by the shelter. It's a chummy relationship, isn't it? But is it shocking? No, that's how we get the whole homeless industrial complex. And if you make it go away, like in the example where I talked about Seattle, you're going to be pared down to just a few folks needed to run that, because at the end of the day, you're going to have a bunch of these other people go, oh, good Lord, they're not supporting my lifestyle anymore here. I'm going to go somewhere that is. I'm going to go somewhere it is. So, it's like that last man standing thing. If you don't offer all this nonsense to these folks, they won't come. Build it and they will come. And that's literally why Seattle and Portland and LA and San Francisco, because they have gone out of their way to make it so accommodating for these folks to live their lifestyle of drugs, crime, whatever. It's not shocking that we end up here. Failure to follow competitive bidding practices. Oh, I don't believe that for a second. And I'm joking, of course. Bidding practices. Why would we do that? I mean, Supermayor doesn't send out, contracts for the village of Dalton for bidding. They just, have one. Her cousin comes on out and, yeah, all right, let's get this done. Let me get your roof done. And then, hey, you're not paying us. They start charging senior citizens who had bad roofs. That's a whole nother story. Failure to follow competitive bidding practices. Department of Investigation. Is that what this is? DOI. What is that? Investigation. It's like I read it before. So found multiple examples of shelter operators awarding multi-million-dollar maintenance contracts to companies affiliated with the building's landlords. Oh, come on now. I mean, sure, that's grossly exaggerated. That can't be. I mean, what do you say, right? You know what's happening. You know what? It's kind of like, this is not shocking. And to have an investigation, you're like, it's a blinding glimpse of the obvious, right? Oh, that came up in the report? Good Lord, I had no idea. Since city budget officials expect to spend over $10 billion, it's like $12 billion on sheltering the unhoused over the next 3 years. Massive money. So there's all these entities that have their hands out in a big way. People are making some money off of this. They really are. We've had that federal money come through with COVID. We've got all kinds of craziness, and guaranteed down the road, a bunch of these cities with these upside down budgets. But hey, federal government, we housed your people for you that, whole thing. This is certainly the hope, right? That there are reforms that are intended to significantly reduce the risk of corruption, fraud, and waste. Yeah, that ain't happening. It's just not. And that's why the homeless industrial complex, they focus on we just need more housing, because literally, if you build it, they will, they've got single units up in Seattle. They're building tiny homes. You can get your own tiny home if you wait long enough. I'm there. Oh, they got good drugs. Oh, yeah. Lack of enforcement. Drugs are decriminalized. The list just goes on. Free banana thrown at your tent every now and then. Free food, free clothing. I mean, free tent, free, you name it. It's free. I mean, so no wonder, in these communities where this has happened, and Seattle is a prime example. And then the rest of us sit around going, what are we going to do to get rid of them all? Well, you built it and they came. And that's why the whole concept of housing first, to me, is a massive no-go. Hey, you want some housing? Go to treatment, get clean, and then we'll work up with you and we'll figure it out. But we can't do that because it's too expensive. We don't have the funds to do that. Instead, we build these little tiny homes and people go in there and overdose, and, they have nobody around them to bring them back with the Narcan. So fentanyl deaths are literally dying out from the inside, meaning that community is being reduced by straight up death. That's how quickly that's happening. The numbers are there. We've talked about it here. Spokesperson for the City Department of Social Services told CBS News Monday night that the agency takes every instance of non-compliance very seriously and has stopped doing business with some of the providers in the Department investigation report. Really? That sounds very threatening, right? As threatening as a paper tiger. But again, none of this is new. You know it's out there. You know it's happening. Every now and then you got a report like this and, oh my gosh, the rest of us are, oh, good Lord, what's going on there? There's fraud happening in New York City's homeless shelter system. I'm shocked. No, you're not either, because this is news for reasonable people, not news for gullible people. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.